Okay, so good morning. Thank you, and welcome. This is my second seminar, the second in a multi-part series, I guess. Working with Breakbeats 2, the layering, for revision 2014. So for those who don't know, I'm Ola Christian Gundelsby, also known as Luguber. I'm a fairly well-known member of the demo scene in some parts of the world, and also a somewhat less accomplished recording artist. I trust you all read the seminar presentation on the website, which explicitly told you to either be at the last year's seminar, which would be too late for some of you, I guess, or see the video on YouTube. So, show of hands, how many did see last year's presentation? What the all right. Right, well, I'll just skip some slides then. Now, okay, so I'm just going to, this is quite central, so I'm just going to, this is a slide from last year. What is a breakbeat? It's a small section of a drum beat from a track, played on a drum kit by some dude in the 70s sometime, recorded to vinyl, sampled by someone, and then magically appearing on a computer. Just so you know, I'm going to be using the word break or breakbeat a lot during the seminar, so it's kind of nice for you to know what that is. Right, so this year we'll be talking about layering breakbeats. I brought 4 examples that I'll go through, some of my own work, and just kind of try to step you through how I work with breakbeats, how I build a beat of several breakbeats and single hits. And that brings us to this one. Usually, you might have some idea of what you want to do when you open your sequencer, I would suppose, and unless you're just mucking about. So it helps to kind of have a notion of what you're trying to make. So you have different kind of needs from the rhythm sections for different styles of music. This is also slides from last year, I think, but I don't remember if actually I had the time to show them. So yeah. Basically, if you're making something smooth, you need something smooth. If you need to do something aggressive, you need something aggressive. And if you're doing music that people are supposed to dance to, you would have to have some logic behind your beats. So if you're going for the Aphex Twin or whatever other IDM kind of thing, then you can do whatever you want. If you want people to dance to it, you should at least be able to nod your head to it in some way, or else you probably won't have much dancing people. Or you could just do like a gunk, gunk for 7 minutes, which would score your recording contract in '97. Yeah. And as I said, if there's no dance floor to cater for, you can do basically everything you like. Just a few things about tempo. So if you do like drum and bass, would be 170 to 180 BPM, depending a bit on where you're from. If you're from the UK, you're in the lower 170s. If you're from Belgium, you're at 180 minimum. Anyway, if you have a higher tempo, you need a tighter structure. So you'd probably need to do some quantification of your beats to kind of set things correctly in order so they don't wobble all over the place. And you need to structure your beats kind of a bit more simple than you usually would. Because at that tempo, if you have a lot of stuff going on the 16ths that has weird shuffles and stuff like that, it'll just sound like a mess. And the sound needs to be tighter as well. So if you're doing like a really slow hip-hop track, then you basically don't need to do much with the sound at all, because there's so much time between each hit that if one of them, like a cymbal, has this weird overtone or some ringing or stuff like that, it still happens like once every 2 seconds. And nobody really cares. If you have the same hi-hat 4 times per second, then it'll be more like a constant ringing in people's ears, and it's unpleasant. So, as I said, you can also have a looser feel for lower tempos. Doesn't matter that much. Less controlled sound. Yeah, that's basically it. So, what are you going to use your breakbeats for? If the beats have the main focus, then it can be big and brash, it can sound large, it can be dense in frequency, and by that I mean that it takes up a large part of your soundscape. So that's perfectly fine, especially for dance floor music. If you're doing more melodic stuff and basically just use the breakbeat to fill out the rhythm section or just kind of like add a rhythmic texture to your track, then you should be, first of all, building on the rhythm of your melodic content. That's important. You have to work with your melodies and not try to do something that's wildly different to them. It'll be confusing again. Again, if you're doing IDM, disregard all this. And just kind of doing its job without stealing focus. It's your rhythm section. It's not supposed to be your solo instrument. And you need to control the frequencies because it should basically be in the background. There is a reason they place the drummer all the way back on the stage. Yeah. Okay, so now that we discussed all that, and you know what you want to do, and blah, 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 yada, yada, and so forth, we'll just start looking into actual layering. So I'll start up with this one. This is originally just a bootleg remix I did of some girl who posted a track she did with piano and vocals on SoundCloud, and I just kind of sample it and put in a track. And then, after I'd done that, I just put the track back up on SoundCloud and sent it to her, and she was like, she liked it, so I got the vocal tracks, the actual vocal recordings, and I've spent a bit more time on it and did a more proper remix. I think it's a cover song of some band or guy I never heard of and don't really care about, but still, that's it. So I'll just play through at least some part of the song so you can kind of get an image of how this song is, and then we'll start to break down the different parts afterwards. That's enough for you to get sort of an image of what this is. It's nothing special about it, just a nice, simple kind of breakbeat roller without any, it's not especially big or anything. So what I did was I started out with this break right here. We'll just set some loop points. There we go. And this break is one that it's called Cook. I don't remember exactly who the artist and the name of the track it's sampled from is, and that's probably good. And this was the first break that I imported into the project, and I was for some time just using this one. It's until I started building out the track with more elements, this kind of did its job nicely. But after that, I had to start filling it out. So the main things that this break gives the track is the bass drum and a nice snare, and you can hear the kind of simple hi-hat on top of it. So then I needed something else to kind of start filling this out. So I got this one. This is Swamp Fever. I think that's the name of the track. So it's basically a bit more of the same. It should work quite nice together with this one. And it even has a nice break at the end, which I'm actually just using as it is. So that's kind of like the main beat of the track. And yet it's kind of like I still felt I needed something more. So I went to another classic, the assembly line break. But I'm just using this. It's a small part of the break. It's a fantastic break that you can really use for, if you just let it run open, it'll sound huge and fantastic for stuff. But I just needed something at the top and just add more roll into it. So as you can hear, it's not really, the first two breaks are quite audible in the mix. You can hear them quite distinctly. This one is just in the background, and I just use it to kind of fill out, to get a ride kind of cymbal and some extra shuffles in the background. And then we have this. This is a tighten up break. Some of you should know this already. And again, the same thing. It's quite aggressively high-passed. I just want the top of it. I just want more kind of sheen and stuff going on in the higher frequencies. And I'll just start playing again. And I'll add it. So as you can hear, that break as well, just it's not something you necessarily could pick out in the mix when you just listen to the full track. But as you can hear, when I'm adding it and removing it, it kind of just brings more to the rhythm. And then there is another classic as well. It's the tambourines from the Think break. Is the door not properly shut, or is someone just really speaking loud in the main hall? I think you will recognize these. Those are parts of bigger break that you have heard in a lot of breakbeat material. And again, I just kind of felt I needed something to be a bit more distinct and just add the on top of the rhythm. So let's see. And now we kind of have this nice rolling beat. This is, I guess, full featured. Those who were at the seminar or remember the seminar from last year will remember that I talked about reinforcing beats, or reinforcing breaks. And that basically means I add single hit drum samples below the breakbeat just to get a nice kind of punchy kick. And if I need to reinforce the snare, typically that would be the bottom frequencies of the snare because I pitch breaks up most of the time. And that's just like this. And this, of course, sounds meaningless on its own, especially the snare drum. But again, this is added after I've kind of built the main beat with the breaks. And its only job is to fill out where the breakbeats aren't working. And for the snare, that was the lower part, the kind of the impact part of the sound. So I just added, I think this might even be bandpassed, just to get it exactly where I want it, pitch it to the right tone, bandpass it, and make sure it just does its job. So if we now do like this. But it still sounds like the same beat, and it's supposed to sound like the same beat. I just need, and this is typically stuff that would on a PA system, or if you play this track on a club or something, this is what makes the difference between a beat that's just a beat and a beat that kind of has the power to move people, that you can hear it. So together with the bass line, the gunk, gunk, that's your kind of main instruments in moving people around. Okay, so that's basically the rhythm section of this track. Hopefully this year I will have more time than last year, so feel free to just ask questions anytime you want. The guy sitting ready with his microphones, you just raise your hand if you suddenly feel like asking something, and feel free to interrupt me in the middle of something as well, if there's something you want about.
Do you do much of dynamics processing on the individual loops, or just keep them as they are?
Right. So the question was, do I do a lot of dynamics processing on the loops, or just keep them as they are? The honest answer is I don't remember. Let's let's see. The answer is no. I do, and I spoke about this last year, I do a lot of pre-processing on breakbeats. When I make my own tracks, I kind of grew up on old UK hardcore and jungle, so I tried to emulate that sound. And that sound was basically made out of using early Akai samplers or EMU samplers. And those samplers had a few characteristics that sound a bit weird 20 years later, but what I basically do is that I use an emulator called Time Machine. I think it's still called Time Machine. I got the original version of it from a guy called Breakbeats. Any Dutch people here? Yeah. Yeah? That's almost correct? Okay, fine. And what this does is basically that it's a vintage sampler emulator. And what it does, you can set the sample rate and the bit depth of the sampler, and then you just run the sound through it, and you get a different sound. What I do is that on really boring nights, I have this on Cubase project, which I load up, and then I import breakbeats, split left and right into separate files, because very often the stereo recordings from the 70s have different instruments on different sides. I run it through this, which basically then at 11 kilohertz, 22 kilohertz, 32 kilohertz, and with a 12-bit depth setting. And for reasons I don't understand, because I'm not really good with the audio stuff, going down to 12-bit does something with the dynamic. The drums get more punchier for some reason. I don't know why, I can't explain why, but it does. Yeah. Says the Germans, like, well, it's quantizing. What is it you don't understand? Yeah, but it doesn't matter to me. The whole thing is just, I listen to the old stuff, I read up on what kind of equipment they use, and I just try to emulate the sound it in. So that is some dynamics processing, and this is done way before I import anything into a project. I just do this on boring nights. It's about as interesting as sorting your sample collection, but it's important work, and I need to do it. But after that, this track is over a year old now. It's 1.5 years or something, so I changed probably my workflow a bit. For the Swamp For Your break, use an expander and a compressor. We talked about this last year, and the expander basically, if I have a break that has a lot of room on it, and a lot of these breaks will have it because they're recorded with a single mic just hanging in front or over the drum kit, or a single mic hanging over the drum kit and one mic in front of the bass drum. So there's a lot of room from the room the drum kit was recorded in. And that's sometimes cool, and sometimes that doesn't fit what I do. So if I need to remove the room, I will use an expander, which basically, you set a threshold just like with a compressor, and then when the sound level goes below the threshold, the sound level is decreased even more by the expander. So obviously, if you set your timings right and your levels right, that will kind of kill the room sound a bit, and you get a kind of tighter sound. So I use that. This one. And then there's the compressor right here. which probably just... So I guess the answer is yes, and also it depends. I don't really have no, but I don't really have many set rules for this. I'll start up by loading in the break, and I will pitch it to the correct tempo. I will chop it up and kind of sequence the rhythm that I want, and then I'll take a step back, listen to it, and try to figure out if I need to do anything more. And most of the time, I will just, rather than spend like an hour on this break, I will just do a quick high pass, for instance, just if I want that to get some rumble out of the way. I'll move on to the next break, and I'll try to build my beat entirely by just selecting breaks that work well with each other. And the next day, when I listen to what I've done on the way to work, on the bus or something, I will typically start noticing, like, okay, there's some stuff there that should be fixed that's out of time. Ooh, I didn't notice that ringing in the hi-hat, but that I really noticed that now, and stuff like that. And but when I'm in the process of building a beat, I will just do really rough adjustments, levels, panning. I sometimes pan them, and just high pass or low pass something, and just leave it at that and just run it. There are exceptions, but that's what I basically do. And we already have the assembly line break. This is quite aggressive high passing, and then in addition, I moved some ringing. It's typical if you have breakbeats with a ride sample going. The tighten up break is a really good example of that. It will have ringing where the ride symbol is. And you hear that here as well. And depending on how loud the break is in the mix, I will do none, some, or a lot of EQing to not remove the ringing, but kind of bring it down on a level with the rest of the sound. I sometimes use de-essers for that. Works fine. Or a multi-band compressor, or just a straight EQ. Yeah, so that's a long answer to a short question. Anything else?
Because I don't have any guts and breaks. I always thought you have to do everything yourself. So that always keeps me apart from making stuff like you.
Yeah.
Because everything I can do is program 99 and 808.
Yeah.
That's kind of feasible within the other electronic stuff, but that's so beyond my grasp doing breaks. It's kind of interesting to see that you really go back to find the actual old tracks and spice those up and layer that much up. I had no idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends. It's kind of the same thing that you could do what you do, or you can buy Vengeance sample packs. For single, it's kind of like you can get great sample libraries with breaks in them. That's where a lot of this work has already been done. Or you could be a total geek like me and just sit around at home and listening to 70s funk music and like, ooh, I like that section right there. And then spend like 2 hours trying to make it into something usable. I guess it's it all depends. But I like this, and I think that if you have an ambition of having your own kind of sound and having like a recognizable sound that's slightly yours, then you will have to put in the effort to make it happen like that. And the way I work with my breakbeats is pretty much. I don't think I have a clearer signature to my tracks than the rhythm section and the breaks. When it comes to arrangement, when it comes to what kind of instruments I use, I'm more selective, but I don't think I made it soundtrack without a breakbeat in God knows how many years. And that includes the rock section of the Invite soundtrack, by the way. So I tend to find use for it somewhere, and basically my entire world is nails. Kudos to those who got that. Okay, then I think I'll just move on to the next example if no one has any more questions here. No? Let's see. New. So the next example is from a demo called Carl Breaks with a Norwegian supergroup called B, which is me and Kusma from XS. And every third year at kindergarten we make a demo. We don't really remember why this is a tradition, but it is now, so usually involves alcohol in some way. And this year we figured we were, I think we started listening to gangster rap at some point during the night, and one thing led to another, and but no details, no. But still, and it's kind of cool. I don't get the chance to do much hip hop, and because without, I don't find any pleasure in doing hip hop instrumentals if no one's going to do anything on them. So without MCs, hip hop is not really that interesting to me. But this we found use for. Let's say last version with samplers is V15. Great. I most professionally decided to use the slides as my notes. Let's see. And I prepared one called Revision, which is not the same version, so. Right. Just do the same thing again, just start it, and we'll listen to it for a short while, and we'll break it down again.
Let's see how Carl handles this.
Keep your face down, keep your ass up, keep the titties jumping, keep the henny coming, keep your face down, keep your ass up. Every bitch in here need to be touching something.
Yeah. So I think we'll stop it there. It's this is a family show. Okay, so I think the first thing you'll notice is, like, if you remember the last example, there were like 8 or 9 tracks for the rhythm section. Here we have 3. When it comes to hip hop, I'm very much into the old school kind of do a break and put a bass line over it, and then that's kind of sound. Possibly not that surprising, but still that's what I like. And so this is kind of easier because you find one breakbeat that is your main breakbeat, and just kind of fills it out with some small stuff. And it should really sound like there's just one breakbeat. That's the kind of authentic sound, when they stood there with their turntables and just like played the same kind of break again and again and again and again on alternating turntables. So is the loop on? Yes. So this is my main break. And then I just added 2 additional ones. First this. And you'll notice that this is very low. It's just to kind of, again, I just wanted some cymbals in the back that kind of fills it out and makes it a bit bigger. And then we have this one. And keen members of the audience will know that this is actually the breakbeat that was the result of the last track I showed you. So when I was done with the project, I just kind of bounced out the break and stored it for later. And I've used that a lot since. In both tracks like this, I used in drum and bass tracks, and breaks tracks and everything. So I think there's a random tips and tricks slide at the end, but still, whenever you kind of like made a beat you're happy with, bounce it out as audio and store it for later. If you're going to be really nice to yourself, just write the BPM in the file name. It could save you some time. Okay, and apart from that, the track is pretty much basic. There's a bass line. There are, I don't think, yeah, there's the pad for the intro and the breakdown, and then I sampled a lot of vocals from TV shows and hip-hop tracks. So let's have a look at that last version with samplers. which should be 15. And this is another thing I will typically when I'm happy with the sequencing and yeah, it's important to give good descriptive file names or channel names in this matter. I will typically just bounce things to audio internally in Cubase and then just continue working on with that. And that's just to save, for this laptop, saves a bit of CPU. And it also just makes it kind of easier to work with later on. You can just move audio parts around and chop a few snippets, and it makes it easier for me to do fills than having to go back into the sampler and kind of recut the sample and then resequence something and bounce it out again. Yeah. So typically when I'm happy with the pitch, when I think that the pitch is correct, when I've chopped up the main parts, and I'll just open the sampler real quick. Yeah, done stuff like this, and this is basically I pitch the break to the correct tempo, or what sounds like the correct tempo, then I will chop the break at the kind of big hits, or kicks and snares, the main ones, and that just makes the main hits tight. And I'll leave the small shuffles in between as they are. They should be mostly correct anyway because you pitched the break to the correct tempo. And I believe or feel or whatever that this kind of retains the natural groove of the break. I don't like to chop a break into 16ths and then just grid quantizing everything. I think that's, for the stuff I do mostly, that's gets too kind of, sounds like a machine to me. A huge part of using sample breaks is the original groove of the drummer, and so I'd like to retain that as much as possible. But I still need to align the big hits, because if not, the rhythm will sound sloppy. That's of course very much my way of doing stuff. A lot of people like to chop up their beats and quantize the 16ths, and of course the higher tempo you have, the better that probably will be for your sound as well. Yeah, so this is the break. It's chopped up now, I think, with a bit of luck. No. Where do we have this? Oh, I turned down the sound. Small sections like that I will typically keep. Yeah.
Is this on? Oh, okay. Do you keep the vinyl pop and click sounds in it to make it sound more authentic, or do you usually clean that in pre-processing as well?
No, I don't really do that because I'm lazy. I don't really have any good plugins for it either, so I just don't care. Okay,
that works, I guess.
It's if the break, if there's so much pop and clicks that it's unusable, I'll probably just not use it, or I will just use it in the situation that I want it to have pops and clicks. If not, I will find something else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is the main, again, the main break. This is the backbone of the track, together with the bass line. And you will see again here, EQ, EQ. There's the expander doing the same thing, less room. I use, instead of compression, I would just use distortion box. That's basically the same. I mean, you do get dynamic compression when you do distortion, because it's basically saturating the entire signal for you. You have to use that with a bit of care though, because it could give you some EQ challenges, and also, for instance, like with this distortion box, which I really like, it has a tendency of even though it has a brick limit switch, you can still get sound above 0 dBFS, meaning clipping sound. So Cubase handles that fine internally, especially as long as it's in a single track. Even works fine, depending on your definition of fine, from one track into a bus. But you should be careful about it, and I usually you find some way of just reducing the gain after the plugin, because whoever made the plugin didn't really find it necessary to have a output gain knob on it. What would that be useful for? So that's basically it. We'll have a listen to the break without any inserts. That's basically it. So as you can hear, I've done some stuff, but I still kind of try to retain the sound of the break, and it mostly sounds like it did originally, but it just fits better in the mix. At least I think so. For the other breaks, a lot of the same kind of process. This one I did do anything with. I think there's, yeah. Is again just high-passed quite hard and removed some stuff in the middle I didn't like and just took down the tops a bit. And there was some weird stereo thing on that break, so I just kind of used the plugin to make it a bit not so wide. And that was the Black Heat break. And then again the Cook For You break, which I already made. That is, of course, perfect as it is. So this is coming from one of my earlier projects, so I just high-passed it a bit, and that's basically it. Now I run all these 3 breaks into a master bus, or a bus, where I add more distortion. This is a guitar distortion amplifier simulator. And tape saturation after distortion, because you can always have more saturation. And then there's a compressor. Let's see how much that really does. Does it sound like I'm having buffer problems with Cubase? Yeah, okay. Fine. We'll just turn down the sound a bit. The metering should still be somewhat exact. So as you can see, dynamic reduction about 2, 3, 4 dB, something like that. Typically, when I use all this stuff except for the distortion plugin, which I can't really remember why I put in, but I'm sure there was a good reason for it at some point. It's mostly just to kind of glue things together. So I will use saturators or compressors. I will usually not make them do pretty much. It's like they do 1, 2, 3 dBs of gain reduction, and it kind of just gels the sound together a bit if you're using compressors that make stuff gel together. I use a lot of variety of sound plugins. They are free and they're great, and you should all learn to love them. They're fantastic. Okay. So since we're out of CPU anyway, I think I'll open for questions. And if there are none, I will just move on to the next example, because I'm predictably starting to run out of time again. I'm really shit at pacing. Okay. Right. So last year I went to England and made some jungle. At the party, yeah. I have this disease. I'm completely unable to just be at a party and just sit down and talk to people for several days. I have to do something. And if there are no demo projects going on, I typically would do a track, because that's what I can do. So last year I went to Sundown and basically just sat down, I think, for around 20 hours or something, and just wrote a track. Let's see. This one didn't have buffer problems when I tested it at home, so. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this is slightly more stuff on the beats again. Again, we'll play a small snippet. And I'll start breaking down afterwards. Yeah? That's terrible. And I wonder why. Okay, I think I'll just go for a quick reboot then. That should solve everything, right? And I'll just have to beg you to believe me when I say that I actually prepared all the projects before going to the party and checked that they worked. Well, that sounds promising. Yeah, I could turn up the latency, but for some reason the Focusrite engineers have decided that every time you change the latency for the sound card driver, it crashes and doesn't store the change. So, yeah, but in principle, you're right. Maybe this will help. I'll just turn off the screen right here. I think I got high resolution now, so that's gonna fuck up the layout of all the projects, but okay. Did it actually start? All right. Yeah. Right. So let's try this again. Cubase really should have like loader music or something like that. I think at this point I wouldn't even mind the FR08. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so, and I think I need to no. Okay. Yeah, this still doesn't work, so that's okay. Let's try again then. It sounds like the BPM is higher at least. That's good, right? Okay, it doesn't really seem to skip anymore, but I think I was lacking some beats. This one doesn't really work, does it? Well, that's great. Right, it's turned just... Okay, so we'll just do the second drop as well because, well, it sounds better with all the drums.
All you niggas
out the light and spark the flare. It's about to go off just like a nuclear.
Okay, so finally. Right, so again, this break right here, you heard it before. And this is still just the sampler. There is nothing on the insert, there's no equalizers, this is just that break, just straight out. I've chopped it up again. I think. Yeah. Like this. That's enough. Now this is my main, once again, my main beat. And then there is this. It's basically Led Zeppelin when the levee breaks. Slightly pitched up. With EQ and an expander. So it makes it a bit more controllable. Yeah. Like you get a lot of weird EQ curves when you work with breaks. This doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it does. Another break, the Simbaku. It's just EQ again. And most notably the high pass, because and then again I'm just using it the high frequencies. I don't want the kick and the stuff at the bottom. The Soul Chicken break. They do the same job and you kind of just fills out each other. If you just heard another reason why I would bounce to audio early, when at some point Cubase started sending note on in the middle of a note if you started playing in the middle of a note. So basically, instead of waiting for the next note and then sending to the instrument, it just starts right away. It means that it just starts the breaks whenever I unmute the channel. It sounds really messy if you do it with 7 or 8 channels at once. Then there's the Think tambourines. You heard the intro. These are just an audio file. It's just a loop, and I'll typically just use this as an audio file just to find the right pitch. And they're great for a lot of things. One thing they're not really that great for is they're in no way quantized, and the rhythm is a bit weird. So if you put this at the start of your track, like I did because I'm a genius, and then let's say you try to mix that track later on as a DJ, not the best of ideas. So if you use that one for an intro or something, please add a closed hi-hat or something for sane people to kind of align their beats to. And then there is the actual the Think break with some other breaks as well. This is from an older project. And again, I'm just using this as a top to add some excitement and to get more action on the 16ths, which I think is really important. And then I have some amens. That's, of course, the holy grail of all drum and bass producers, is to spend endless nights working on the amen break and try to make the coolest amen the world's ever seen. Typically, you would fail at this, but sometimes you get usable results. And I've used that for some things in this project. Yeah, stuff like that. And that is basically it. We'll have a quick look at the bus, but it's not going to be, well, there are some amens I sampled from another tune I make that you just use for breaks. I think It's just used like this. And then there's a crash symbol, and that's it. On this track, I routed some channels into this bus that's called Jungly 16s, and that's basically the brakes that are responsible for most of the movement on the 16s in the rhythm. And I processed them. First of all, I used this distortion plugin here. It's a free one from Klanghelm, which is really nice because you can dial in where you want the response. And if you have drums, especially sample breakbeats, and you add distortion to them, you will typically get a lot of ringing and just kind of unusable noise. For some reason, this plugin right here works really good at just adding some excitement in the top and doesn't really have that many side effects. So I dial it in quite high, and then suddenly I get some air into my breaks. And considering that I'm using this process of resampling the break to lower bit depth and also lower sample rate, I will almost always need to add quite much, either with an EQ or with saturation or distortion or all three of them, to get some air back into the breaks again, because they're dull after this process. And I will typically do that on the bus, and they just, yeah. So distortion, again, some compression, doesn't really do that much. It's almost inaudible, but it's audible enough on a big system. And then there's simple, just a high pass at 98 hertz with a nice 6 dB filter. Just removed some. For some reason, the Think tambourines has subsonic content. I don't really know why, but that shouldn't be there. Because it's sampled from vinyl. Yeah, that's true. You're probably right. I never thought about that, which is sort of embarrassing, I guess. And then there's this small little thing from Elisha, which is they call it the niveau filter. And basically, what you do is you set a EQ frequency right here, and then you can either gain or decrease gain right here. And what it does is basically, I think this is more or less a simultaneous low and high shelf filter. So you can kind of like I've done here, I think. I've decreased about 2 dB at 700, basically doing a low shelf filter from low shelf EQ from 700 hertz, 2 dB down, 2 dB up on the other side. But it's a bit more complicated than that because it sounds way better than if you do just that. Great, useful little tool, and it's free as well. And then on the Jungly 16s group is routed into the Beats group, which is the main group for the Beats. And as you can see, so is everything else except for the crash symbol, which I like to route to the master. And on the Beats group, you will find some more stuff. So there's more distortion. This time in the mid-range. It's the Thrill Seeker VBL, which is, what is it again, a broadcast compressor limiter or something. I typically throw it, I'm very good with the technical stuff. I typically throw this on a bus. I just find that it's very good for kind of getting things together, give different tracks kind of coherent sound, and so it feels like there's one rhythm section that kind of moves. And also, it's good for dynamic compression as well. And another compressor, and another EQ, and then there's the SPL Free Ranger, which is a, what is it called, fixed band EQ from SPL. This is the free version. The full version has all the bands working. This version only has the one that are orange. But yeah, which you think, well, that's useful. The thing with this one for me is that this 1K8 band right here and the 150 band are perfect for snares. At 1K8, that's basically the crack of the snare, and at 150, that's what hits you in the gut. And this particular EQ is fantastic for both of them. So whenever I have breaks or just a snare that I think needs to be livened up a bit, I'll just use this one, punch it up, and boom. So it's more useful than you'd thought. And I'll probably shell out for the full version at some point because I think it's really, really good. And then at the end I have a limiter. Some of you might frown on that. I will not. We'll see. And that's the reason why. When you work with breakbeats, especially taking stuff in and out, sometimes you will get two snares hitting at the same time, or the first snare in the break will be higher than the second snare in the break, stuff like that. I just use a limiter to kind of take out the offending. It's typically the snares, so it just kind of holds them back. It doesn't really do much for the sound, but it does a lot for not confusing the compressor on the master bus later on with sudden kind of bursts of energy. So I get less of the kind of pumping, sucking thing on the compressor on the master bus, or in the next bus if I'm routing it. I will do this on individual breaks, I will do this on groups, and so on and so on. Okay, I'm out of time again. But I don't think there's anyone coming after me, is it? So for those of you that are on the clock, we're done. If you would like to stay 10 minutes more, I'll stay. Okay, I'll take a sip of water and give those of you who want to leave a chance to run for the fire exit. Right. Okay, so. That's all right. I probably won't remember your face, so I can stab you with the pen later on. No, I'm just joking. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Are we applauding people who leave now? No, I have one example left. It's going to be pretty fast. Okay, any questions to this?
Did you check out excellent audio liquid drums yet?
No, I have not had the time to do that since we spoke about it. Was it yesterday or was it the day? No, no, but I haven't had time to do it yet.
I just wonder how much effort it would be to make an authentic sounding old school drum as if would it sound if you would sample it from somewhere.
If I know that the guys in Noisia does it. They use one of the premium drum rumplers, one of the really good ones where you can change microphone positioning and all that stuff. And they do a lot of their drums in that way. So they will basically build up their own drum kit, position microphones, sequence the drums, and then sample it. For me, that sounds like a lot of work. But yeah, it's doable. I think one thing that you will miss by that approach is basically some of the charm of sampling old breakbeats is that you want that particular sound. The Amen break is probably, or the Apache break is probably one of the most recognizable breaks you can think of. And if you want to do a jungle track that sounds like it's from '94, then you basically get an 808 kick drum for your bass line, you get an Amen break on top of it, and you find some ragga vocal to sample, and that's it. And then you just spend the rest of your life doing with the Amen snare.
It's keeping me from making breakbeat and jungle stuff all the time because I have to do it on my own.
Yeah.
And it does work.
Oh, it's hard. I've tried to sequence breaks with the single hits. You get usable results sometimes, but I mean, I don't know, I'd probably be better off buying a good drum kit and learning to play drums and hope that I have some magic groove inside my body like the funk drummers of the 60s. Because, as I said, the groove and feel of the break is as much of the appeal as the sound is for me when I sample breakbeats. It's not just about getting the sound authentic or something, it's also about getting the kind of feel and groove and flow of the rhythm the way I want it to be. And that typically means having some brilliant session drummer doing his small shuffles. And I'll find the one shuffle that's really good, and I'll just copy it 260 times on the track. Okay, so I'll take the last example then, and then we can try to go on with our days. There we go. See, it's prepared, even in the file name and everything. So this track is originally by a Norwegian, I think they call themselves neo-soul/funk band. At some point they announced on Twitter that, hey, if anyone wants to remix us, please send us an email for the sample pack. And someone I knew, or someone rather I follow on Twitter, retweeted that tweet, and I sent an email and was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I took it home for Christmas and worked a bit with it. Was good fun, and then I kind of got just laying on the shelf for a while. Suddenly I got an email, it's like, well, the deadline for the remix competition is Sunday at 23:59, so please make sure your entry is ready by then. I was like, competition? Okay, well, sure, I guess. And then I tried to finish the remix within a weekend. So... So I'll just run quickly through this. This project is so big that I had no way of retaining the original sampler channels. So it's all in audio now, just so it would even run on the laptop. For this track, I started out with the Apache break, which is this one. And then I just had that and a bass line, and the vocals was kind of like what I worked on for a couple of hours, just trying to find a bass line and just some rough rhythm things. And when I had that, I added more breaks. This is another composite break that I've done myself a long time ago, which consists of 3 breaks from another project. And then there's a Simbaku break, which you heard in the last project as well. And that's the kind of like the base of the rhythm section. In addition to that, there is a kick and a snare for reinforcement. So, I think the most interesting part about this track actually is this one break that I've discovered recently and kind of fell in love with. This, it's called the Doggone break. It's really noisy and loud, but it works so well for just high passing and just adding on top of stuff, and you get that kind of big, beautiful sound that just kind of instantly lifts my track up. And it's also got a few, let's see. I'm not sure if I actually use it in this track, but it's got a lot of the fills with a huge toms on it. So it's perfect. And in addition to that, there's the Think tambourines again, and you've heard that before. Notice how low this is. It's barely noticeable. And I don't think it will actually even translate right here, but if we had a bigger system and played it a bit louder, you would hear, or rather kind of just kind of get the notion something changed when they're turned on and off. So it's a tiny detail, but it does a lot for the impression of the rhythm section. If you play it loud enough, if you play it at low volume, you won't hear it. But that's who would play music at low volume. And then there's this break, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard before. You will hear it in. Okay. Well, that's nice. You will probably use it for Poison. It's the main break for Poison. That's the Skull Snaps break, and it's used in a lot of drum and bass as well. Okay, I don't know. Feel free to ask some questions. If not, then.
What's the worm?
Yeah, the worm. Let's see if we like this. So yeah, details are important. I think it's about as interesting every time I use it. Oh, there's more. Yeah, I use it for fills, but it's typically just 3 or 4 hits. Anything else I didn't went through here? No, I think that should be everything. It's actually the same BPM. I should actually be able to just match them. Well, this is going to last for a while, I think.
If you talk.
I just have a stupid question. The middle part, does it really say
Yeah, you
Luguber?
need to wait until the jingle is over because the speakers are pointed towards you. They don't help me nothing. It's just for the people at home.
In the middle part of the tune, does it really say Luguber? Not in this, but in the invitation tune. Where Moki and Oki are done saying something, and then you have the noise, and I want to tell you about something about Luguber.
No, it's no. I think you are saying I've heard you, so I heard you've heard something about some rumors. That's the line that one of you says. And then I used, for the glitch part, I just, you know the glitch VST? Yeah, it does that, but that's purely coincidental. And why would anyone spend an evening trying to automate glitch just to make your sounds like someone says your name? That would be stupid. No one. You'd be a total loser for using your time like that. Okay.
So if you talk to other breakbeat producers, like you go on about, hey, great use of the doggone break and stuff like, hey, I heard you reverse the warm thing and throw in the think tank stuff.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
That's the whole point about break.
Yes, it will be like that, and there's a secret black market for trading custom breaks. If you have any younger siblings, sisters, cousins, something like that, preferably female, I can hook you up. We also accept cocaine and weapons. No, certainly there's an interest among people who does breakbeat made music, and especially if you hear something you haven't heard before, or something that just sounds really good. So yeah, and a lot of times you will hear there is this UK drum bass producer called Technical Itch, and he has the best sounding amens in the business. At least that's my subjective opinion. And I'd probably give my right arm to, no, the left arm, always the left arm. It's just to get his amen, because it has everything I want it to be. And I've tried so many nights just try to copy that, because I want exactly that sound. It sounds nice and punchy. It sounds like it's mildly saturated through some arcane mixing desk, and so it's perfect. And sure, if someone I know plays me a track and has either a fantastic sounding breakbeat or some breakbeat I haven't heard before, because they still exist, people still make music and have drum solos. So yeah, we're talking about that and discussing how you do it. I've had discussions on where the ringing in the ride cymbal of Tighten Up is located exactly. I'm also available for children's parties. We're a lot of fun.
It's so great. I mean, there is very often the answers within music production are always when the stuff initially happened.
Yeah.
Like all these shuffles and stuff. It's the same with techno, and internet forums are all like, how is this sound made? And actually, if you look at some old acid track, it's always take this stupid thing 303, just put it through a mixer and overdrive the input. That's it.
Yeah.
And people go on about with 10,000 plugins and they just don't hit it. And it's pretty interesting to see there is something similar with the breaks scene going on about the shuffles and stuff like that. Just things you can't really hit and miss yourself.
Yeah.
Like I tried to reproduce a breakbeat once with that excellent audio thing, and it completely sucked, because obviously if you start, you got all the quantized notes and stuff, so you have to manually shift around, but you will never get this kind of groove going on. So at that point I decided no breakbeats for me.
Yeah. But you're German, so you guys have no groove. You are the computer people.
Yeah. Obviously.
No.
Anyway, this kind of puts the entire breakbeat thing into a new perspective for me, which is all about giving a shot. And we should sit down and take the amen thing from Technical Itch apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll set aside the summer and. Yeah. But no, thank you. And yeah, I will say this though. It's I think a lot of the kind of the internet wankery goes on with the 10,000 plugins and how to sound like this and how to sound like that. Naturally, for those who were here last year, I had some recommendations on what to do with the Vengeance sample packs. I mean, they're fantastic, but you will still sound like everyone else because everyone else is using them. I was talking about having a signature sound, and that I believe that my signature sound is very much about how I do my drums, and especially the breaks processing. And I think that first of all, there's no single plugin that, possibly with the exception of the sampler I'm using, that really I couldn't have exchanged for something else. I found a set of plugins that I like and I use and I know. EQs, compressors, distortion boxes, saturation boxes, the sampler. But I don't think that if anyone asked me, how do you do that, how do you do this, I would probably just speak in general terms about I took the bottom end out of that break and retained the kick drum from that break. And exactly at which, if was it 213 or 216 hertz, who gives a shit? I probably can't even notice the difference. To be honest, I just wave around and find something I like, and then I just leave settings like that until I don't like it anymore. It's just, you'll have to work it out, and there is, I try to speak in general terms. When people ask me stuff, it's the same thing here. Do you have dynamics processing? Yes, I use an expander. It reduces the room sound. I showed you the plugin with the settings on, but it's not like I have a set rule of set this to that and this to that and 4 dB minus here, and then you're good. It depends on the break. It depends on how much or how less room I want to have. It's the answer to every question about sound is always it depends. And I think you'd be idiots trying to emulate, with the exception of the technical HAMN, you'd be idiots trying to emulate the sound of other or the producers, or spend your time with the countless how to make a Skrillex bass in your favorite sequencer, or soft synth here, or how does Noisia do blah, 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 blah. That being said, there can be a lot of learned from trying to copy them themselves, but not by just watching a video of how someone else did it. But trying to kind of recreate a sound yourself is typically something you learn a lot from. But again, trying to sound like someone else, there's really so much better things I could do with my spare time and my still existing right arm. Okay. Anyone else? No? Then I think we're done here. Thank you. Oh! Wait. I was really professional. I made yes. All right, so I'm not on Facebook for anyone who wanted to ask that. I'm on Twitter. You can hear me at the main stage at 8 o'clock-ish, together with Hoffman. I have a SoundCloud page. I have a website where I put out most of the demo soundtracks I do for download. And you should all come to Solskogen and Kindergarten, which are Norwegian demo scene parties and fantastic demo scene parties. And after you prepaid your tickets and booked your flights for that, you should also consider going to Sundown, Evoke, Function, and Tursak. And I'll be at all those parties, so you can meet me there. It should be more than enough reason for all of you to come. All right. Now, thank you.